Hi, friends. It's Will Parker here from Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. We are excited to announce that we are approaching our 400th episode. Can you believe it? To make this milestone even more special, we'd love to hear from you. If this podcast has inspired, helped, or encouraged you, would you consider sharing your thoughts with us? It's easy. Find a quiet spot, record a 60-second voice memo on your phone, and email it to will@williamdparker.com. We are eager to hear why the show resonates with you, your favorite moments, or anything you find particularly thought-provoking or funny. Thanks in advance for your contributions, and thank you for doing what matters. Principal Matters Podcast, episode 397. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, we're going to be talking about maximizing feedback to teachers with my special guests, Molly Dexter, Brandon Mawhorter, and Kathleen Beckham. Let me do some quick introductions here. First, Molly Dexter is an experienced educator, having worked in various educational settings from preschool to high school. She holds a bachelor's in political science and a master's in education. Passionate about improving education, she joined DigiCoach over a year ago to enhance the experiences of educators and students. She believes in the power of positive coaching for effective learning environments. Brandon, just go ahead and pronounce your last name for me.
Brandon Mawhorter.
Brandon Mawhorter is a self-taught tech enthusiast who started as an IT support in Southern California schools. And with a background deeply rooted in education, he has been a key member of DigiCoach since 2011. His experience has been instrumental in the platform's development, focusing on client satisfaction and ongoing improvement. And he plays a vital role in expanding DigiCoach's coaching systems and ensuring comprehensive client support. And last but not least, Kathleen Beckham has over 50 years in education, spanning kindergarten to community college. She's a dedicated advocate for students in curriculum development, and she holds a bachelor's in education and 2 master's degrees in reading and curriculum technology. Post-retirement, she joined DigiCoach, where for nearly 10 years, she has contributed to research, webinars, trainings, and company publications. Molly, Brandon, and Kathleen, welcome to Principal Matters Podcast. Why don't you fill in the gaps on that intro and then tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you, and we'll go in order. Molly, you first.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Something about myself, I love learning. I've always loved learning from a kid. I believe in lifelong learning, and I'm really passionate about helping kids to see how school and learning can be something that you're interested in forever. And it goes bigger than just, what you learn in school.
Thanks, Molly. And I'm also going to ask each of you to add where you are today, because I'm coming to you from the Tulsa, Oklahoma area. And where are you, Molly?
I'm Vancouver, Washington.
In Vancouver, Washington. Brandon?
Yes, Guy. Well, I'm Brandon here and I'm out of San Bernardino in Southern California. Something kind of, I guess, personal about me. I'm a new dad. I've got a daughter that took us 8 years to make. Lots of time working with fertility doctors. So we could do a whole separate segment just on all the knowledge that I've learned about fertility over the years. But in this world, I really try to just help provide solutions and support everybody that's getting out to classrooms.
Congratulations on your new baby, Brandon. And Kathleen, where are you today?
I'm at Hollywood Beach. This is Kathleen. I'm Hollywood Beach in Oxnard, California. And not only was I an academic my whole life, I was an athlete, a swimmer, and I also coached swimming, volleyball, and softball, and got involved in all kind of, after that, and my son was growing up, I became an academic coach in academic decathlon, forensic speech, and mock trial. So I just enjoy every aspect of working with students and kids and helping people along the way to reach their goals.
Well, it is such an honor to have all 3 of you in the room. And I want to set some context for Principal Matters listeners and say this at the very beginning. DigiCoach is a longtime sponsor of our podcast, but I want listeners to know that even though I love highlighting resources and inspiring them to adapt good tools and ideas, this is not a sales pitch. The reason I invited the 3 of you into this room is because as we've worked together and talked to each other offline, I have discovered this is a room full of expertise when it comes to working in schools, with schools, and especially your collective wisdom around helping principals maximize their feedback with teachers. So having said that, I want to begin my first question. I want to point it towards Molly and Kathleen. Molly, you have a lot of experience in teacher coaching. So this is the question I would like some feedback from you on. How do you balance giving positive feedback while at the same time addressing areas for improvement in your coaching to help teachers grow and stay in the profession?
Yeah, I think it focuses like starting out what our purpose is. So why are we doing this? And as a teacher myself, I really wanted to know how I could be better for my students, because we're all here to better education and to better our learning for our students. And so having that in mind and remembering that that is our purpose here, I think knowing that your good teachers want feedback, they want to know how they could be better, and framing everything that you share with them, that feedback that you give them, framing that with that in mind, it really allows that feedback to come in on that partnership level rather than something, that feels more criticizing. It doesn't have to be that way. And when you start with that purpose, I think that really connects the relationship between an administrator and a teacher.
I love that. So when we know our purpose, which is that we all want to keep growing together in our instructional work, then we frame our feedback based on that purpose, which means that we're building a partnership, not just being a critic. That's fantastic, Molly. Kathleen, what would you add to that?
I would just say that so many of our administrators were never taught the way that younger teachers have been schooled in teaching methods. And so working together benefits everyone. I think that administrators need to, when you're talking with teachers and you're finding out their goals for their students, and the goals that we have for the students to achieve, asking questions is a much better way of working together. Find out what the teachers are interested in, what they feel like are their strengths and weaknesses. And then I prefer to call them deltas, but talking to them and collaborating and getting them to help with student voice and student collaboration and those types of strategies that are somewhat unnerving to some people. I think it's very important for them to work together and the administrator to ask questions and offer suggestions, maybe, but just one. Teachers have a lot to do. They're staring at those faces every day. So help them by giving them one thing at a time to work on. And the coaching is important. The principal and the administrators are supposed to be the instructional leaders. And I believe that is critically important. They have to be observing and finding out what's truly going on in the classroom to be able to lead.
I'm glad you said that, Kathleen, because you and I both know that a lot of schools have invested in good ways in instructional coaches and leader teachers, but this is a conversation that we're having with education leaders, a lot of whom are principals or assistant principals, or of course I have listeners that are aspiring leaders and superintendents and assistant soups. But why is it so important for that building leader to wear that hat of the coach? Talk about that a little bit more.
Well, I believe that's important because they need to be, the building leaders need to be viewed as a partner, not just as a supervisor in an ivory tower office handling who knows what. I mean, we know how busy administrators are, the things they're given to do, and it's daunting. But I do believe the most important thing is what the student achievement and student wellness. And that happens out in the trenches in the classroom, and leaders need to be there. Then they're visible, they have a purpose, and students respond to that. Not just the teachers, students respond to that by having a leader out there. The research shows that the classroom and the school environment becomes more positive with the administrators just being visible. I think that's powerful. And having them in the classroom and offering their expertise is really critical for the growth of a school and for the teachers to be comfortable.
So Brandon, I want to bring this question over to you because you are an expert in systems. So why is it important for you, because this has been your work for a very long time, to connect technology with how leaders can become stronger coaches?
Sure. I mean, we've been doing this for a decade, and in that decade of talking with administrators, or even my mom was an assistant principal herself, and we've seen that just administrators don't always have time. Everybody in education is pretty time crunched. So trying to find time to get out to classrooms and provide that ongoing feedback versus your, once or twice a year formal evaluation, I think is what's really kind of critical and key to making sure everybody's getting the support that they want and need. With technology, with something like a walkthrough tool, you're able to go out and move beyond just I feel. You have a tool that's going to help you collect some data so that you can have post-observation talks with your teachers or drive your big picture professional development decisions. And ultimately, I think we know administrators want to get to classrooms. Most people in this role are in education to support students, and we know that we need to support our teachers to make that happen. But without a tool, lots of times that doesn't happen, or you're able to get to a classroom and you give your teacher a thumbs up, or you're able to leave a Post-it note. By bringing in, some sort of tech solutions, you're able to move beyond just that kind of a quick pop in. And I think it's really key to kind of keep that coaching hat on to really separate your purpose in the classroom when you're coaching from your formal evaluation systems. Sometimes that's just because the culture is maybe new, the culture of coaching is new. Other times that's because there's strong unions or things in place that really want to make sure that those systems are separate, so that when you're coming in with your coaching hat on, you're not seen as an evaluator. What we've always tried to do is turn administrators into coaches, not the other way around, right? Not when coaches are going in and supporting teachers. When you have instructional coaches, we never want them to feel like an evaluator of the teacher, and they're not. That's not their role. But how do we make administrators feel like a coach? How do we make them feel like a coach to teachers when they're providing that feedback?
And I know that's a big emphasis that you guys have had in the conversations I've had with you, which is making feedback constructive, but not evaluative. And I like what you said, moving beyond what I think and feel in driving your work. I'm just repeating back to you what you said, driving your work with meaningful feedback that's actually connected to data. So how do you collect, as you're walking through, the data that's going to help you drive better decisions? Kathleen or Molly, what would you like to add to that?
Well, I would say that having a tool, I had constructed a Google Sheet long time ago and was gathering data, but the disaggregation, I gave myself another job that I didn't have time for. So looking for something where you can collect data and then looking at the data, that's what's critical. I mean, we became data-driven quite a while ago, especially with No Child Left Behind, where the data collected was tied to funding and all types of things. So people became almost data afraid, data crazy. But the problem with that is that what do you do with that? It's you have to be solution oriented if you're going to move education further. I mean, if you're going to move forward, you have to be able to look and analyze and then say, okay, what's our next step? What are we going to do next? How can we work together to do this? And that's why it's so critical to share data with teachers and ask them, what are we going to do? Where do you feel like we need to move? How can you help each other to move our students forward? So that collaborative attitude begins at the top. And I believe a principal that's collaborative and vice principals or assistant principals that work together for instruction to support. So whatever the teachers are needing, you're there to support them, whether it's hosting a model lesson yourself or showing them a model lesson or giving them resources or sharing a link. It's really important to use that data to move forward.
Thank you for that, Kathleen. Molly, what would you like to add to that before I ask the next question?
I think for me, I go back to the feedback a lot and what is the feedback that you're sharing. And part of what I love so much about DigiCoach is the feedback statements that we provide are, they're written by educators for educators, and they're not just hey, go do this. which for me, I don't want to just be told what to do. I want to know why and how I can do it. And so everything being written in a, hey, have you thought about doing this? Like, it could help your students in this way. I think when you're writing that feedback, keeping that in mind, so that they do have that actionable steps of that they can go back, and then you can go back and connect with them and see, okay, I see that you implemented this. How did it go? And continuing that conversation.
Great point, Molly.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Everyone talks about the power of data-driven instruction, but how do you actually get the right insights and know the best next steps? The secret is IXL. IXL helps you easily assess performance and determines the best path forward for each student. Whether you need data for benchmarking or intervention planning, IXL can do it all. And IXL doesn't stop at assessments. It also provides you with everything else your school needs, from a standards-aligned K-12 curriculum to actionable analytics. IXL's online learning and teaching platform is research proven to improve student outcomes and is used by 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts. If you also want to start driving real progress, get started today at IXL.com/PM. Well, Kathleen, I want to follow up with a question because for you specifically, because I know that you've had a lot of experience in both teaching and school leadership. So in the context of maximizing feedback to teachers, why is it so important to you to encourage our teachers to work together and also to build trust in the way that they work with one another?
I think part of that stemmed from me always being part of a team of some sort, whether it was a softball team, a swim team, a track team, whatever, a team. As far as my family went, we moved around a lot, so we relied on each other. And in coaching of any sort, you offer your observation, you give praise, and you give suggestions. Working with teachers to collaborate, they need to have a forum where they can talk together about what's going on and who's doing what in a safe way, in a safe environment. And I think that that's just so critically important to get teachers together in the small amounts of time we have. Education is very short on time for people to collaborate and talk together, much more so than any other business. But if the teachers feel good and it's part of their culture, it's part of their lives, that during these meetings, they look at the data and what their kids are doing, and they're able to share what's working well, or someone can say, I don't do well with that. Can I come watch you? And then the principal provides the resources for that to happen. So the teacher collaboration time isn't just ideation, it means something. They can help each other, they can go see what they need, and the principal can help provide that by being part of the instructional process.
I like how you compared that to a team, and even like athletic teams, let's apply that to the way our teams work together in schools, because good teams support one another. They observe each other's practices, they praise each other, and then they offer suggestions. I love how you tie that into, okay, let's apply that to the way that our teachers work together as well. Molly, you're a former middle school teacher, and now you do a lot of work with schools, plural, in helping teacher instruction improve. So I want you to be the voice of the teacher right now to the principal. Why is feedback so important to you, and what should administrators keep in mind in how they provide feedback to their teachers?
In my experience, I remember my first year was, it's everyone's hardest year for sure. You have all of this education, but you've never really applied it. And I remember my first year, I would go and ask anyone and everybody for advice. And hey, can you come and watch my lesson? Can you give me something? What do you think about this idea? And I was just like constantly looking for resources. And I knew my administrators were busy. They didn't have the time to come in and watch every lesson as much as I wanted them to be. And I think more of your teachers have that same mindset, that they want you to come in and that they want you to be there and to give them advice, because they believe that you're you're an expert and you know more than them, and they want to take that and to learn how they could be better. And so keeping in mind that, as much, I think sometimes newer administrators too, it might be hard to realize that teachers want that feedback and they might just want to be left alone, and they might come off that way at first, but I think ultimately they do want to know how to be better, and developing that relationship of coaching and having that two-way communication is really important, and teachers really do want that.
I'm so glad you said it that way, because it's so interesting. I was a classroom teacher for 11 years before I stepped into school admin, and did that for almost 14 before I started the work I'm doing now. I can't think of one time in my career where I didn't want feedback. And yet we assume that others don't want feedback. We just assume people want to be left alone, that they're okay with their isolation, when if we turn the mirror back on ourselves, we want feedback, we want advice, we want that input. And so, Molly, thank you for giving us that reminder that anyone who cares about their work wants advice, and they want resources, and they want feedback for what that can look like. Brandon, I'm going to ask you this question, but I know Molly and Kathleen will have input here too. But your superpowers are systems. So I do want you to talk a little bit about some of the systems you've helped create for the last 10 years that help leaders provide meaningful feedback to teachers who are wanting that feedback.
Sure. So in the systems world, I kind of look at our systems, our supports in two facets, right? There's the system of just how do you do walkthroughs, how do you take technology into a classroom, and then the DigiCoach system itself. So just kind of talking big picture on like, how do you get into classrooms? How do you start bringing technology into that process? I don't think there's a one size fits all solution for anybody. Going back to that concept of, every school is focused on their own things. Every school has its own unique culture and climate. The process that you're going to bring something into your campus, or, something into a district-wide type of implementation, is going to differ for everybody. The big pictures, though, you want to start by figuring out what are you going to focus on? What high-yield practices do you expect to see in classrooms? Who's going to be in those conversations? If you're a principal at your site and you're the only one there, perfect. You get to make that decision sometimes, but you might bring in your teachers right into that conversation and say, hey, what do we want to focus on? And I've seen times where administrators even will kind of like split that up based on, grade levels. We had an elementary school we rolled out DigiCoach to a while back, and they created a tool that supported K through 3 and a separate tool that the 4th through 6th grade teachers collaborated on. So, that's kind of the first piece of the puzzle. What are you going to look for, and who's going to be involved in that creation? And then, step 2, what do you want to focus on beyond that? What types of strategies and coach tips do you want to unpack? We want to see relevance built into the lessons, but what are you doing to do that? What types of strategies are you implementing? And that's where DigiCoach and the technology of our tools starts to kind of help support with that system of things. When we looked at the walkthrough process, our retired founder, Doug, was a principal himself, and he made it to classrooms and he gave teachers post-it notes oftentimes. This is back in the days of like PDAs when he was an administrator, pre phones and iPads and things like that. So we said, okay, how do you update an informal walkthrough? How do you bring technology into that process? And of course, there's going to be data collection, but as Kathy shared, you can do that with something like a Google form. You can do that, with pen and paper, and then tally that at the end of the year. So we wanted to make sure that we had, reports that made that helpful. But ultimately, we wanted to really focus on the feedback. Like, that's the problem. Teachers don't always get feedback. And so what we really set out to do with DigiCoach was create something totally designed to support that feedback loop. And what's in our system are things like strategies and coaching tips, basically pre-written statements that help you as a coach, help you as an administrator, give that feedback to your teachers. If you saw relevance built into lessons, great. Let your teachers know by highlighting that with something that they were doing. We call that a strategy. Or if you didn't see relevance built into the lesson, look for a way to offer that feedback, offer some support through a coaching tip. Hey, if you do this, it's going to help your students in this way, to Molly's point earlier. Or drop a reflective question, that kind of flavor and your style is important, and knowing your teacher is important. Some teachers want that feedback. Most teachers do. The style of your feedback is, I think, kind of unique for each teacher. Some folks like that question-oriented coaching. Others, I think, are gonna be like, just give me some tips here. Don't just keep asking me questions. And so yeah, that's kind of what we've done to help with that support. The joke that we always kind of make when we're building out walkthrough to a DigiCoach is kind of like, remember those like reference guys like Microsoft Windows for Dummies, those types of manuals. We've tried to make DigiCoach, and I don't want to say it this way, but we've tried to make it, coaching for dummies, for lack of a better example. If you're new to the coaching role, those pre-written strategies and coach tips help you, right? That system's there to help you with language that supports teachers in a way that doesn't feel evaluative, that really helps make sure you have your coaching hat on, back to our earlier point. So yeah, that's kind of the way that I look at things, and look at the tech and how the tech can come in and help the support, and how it lives within the system, really tying into whatever you're focusing on.
I love that. I want to say a few reflections, and then I have some follow-ups for Molly and Kathleen. What I like about those reflections, Brandon, is your reminder to, first of all, that big picture reminder that leaders, and I'm going to say this on top of what you said, that you have to schedule and prioritize the feedback, which means that if you're not scheduling and prioritizing walkthroughs and observations and feedback, it's probably not happening. And with that prioritizing, you also have to know in advance what are the practices that you're actually planning to observe. And so for a lot of districts and schools, those things are defined. Maybe they're defined collaboratively through agreements that are teacher led, or in some states like where I live, there are a couple of different observation standard forms you can use that have to match what other folks are doing. So it looks different state to state. And then the last thing you said is, having done that, then what strategies and feedback can you actually provide that help people get better? And so you can prioritize it and you can schedule it, but then what are you doing once you've done that actually gives people meaningful feedback? So Molly and Kathleen, I want to ask you a couple of follow-ups from this perspective. First, Molly, if you're the teacher on the other side of that feedback, let's say, and we're going to use DigiCoach as an example, because you guys, this is the tool that you're most familiar with using and providing that feedback with. What does that look like on your end? And then Kathleen, I'm going to ask you to describe what it looks like from the administrator's side.
From the teacher's perspective, it's really simple. There's not a lot that as a teacher that you have to do. Hopefully, we always encourage administrators to involve teachers in the process of what this will look like, and what your goals are and what your priorities are, so your teachers know when they come into their class, like they know what you're going to be looking for. So we're even setting goals together, like, hey, I'm really working on my collaborative activities. Can you come in and make sure to give me some feedback on that? And so then with DigiCoach, all your teachers have to do is open their email after you've done your walk, and they open it and they can read that email and get your feedback and your observations and any reflective questions, and then can respond to that and send a, hey, thank you for sharing, and I'm really gonna come back and think on this. And yeah, so that's what it looks like as a teacher. Really simple.
Kathleen, from the administrator's perspective, what would you add to that?
Well, I would add, especially with Molly, just to piggyback off what Brandon said, we're talking about, and going back to the coaching realm, that I always think about it, I think as a coach for a long time, that it's not twice a year. You would never, in the coaching realm of an athletic team or even an academic team, look at something one time and then let them repeat all of whatever it is they're doing for 3 to 4 months, 5 months, before you go in again and say something. That's ludicrous. Well, it's ludicrous in the educational world too. So as an administrator, setting priorities, even getting out 20 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day to do observations and give feedback, it's beautiful that you have it through email, because those people like Brandon was talking about, they're a little bit reticent to engage and talk. They're not very comfortable talking about strategies or coaching tips. You're engaging them via an email in the beginning, and they're getting more comfortable with that type of feedback and coaching. And then they will bring that into those collaborative meetings with other teachers and begin to feel more comfortable in that realm. It's not a realm that either administrators or teachers have been in very much, the coaching aspect of it, working together on curriculum. I see it a lot more often in elementary schools than I have in high schools. So that is, as an administrator, it gives me the ability to give feedback often. We want our teachers to give immediate feedback to students when we're checking for understanding all the time. Every 15, 20 minutes, we're asking for some kind of feedback. And that's what we need to do as administrators. We can't do it every 15 or 20 minutes, but we can be in the classroom more than twice a year. So that, for administrators, having a tool that allows them to maximize their time is what's critical. Things need to be made easier and to fit into what they're doing now, their mission, their goals, their initiatives. That can all be put into one place, and they've got a vehicle. They've got something to help them do that, because you can't move into that realm if you don't have help, because there's no time. The time crunch is, you could work 24 hours and not have that time. So that's what's critical for administrators. But leading your school means that you're working with teachers and students toward student achievement, both in wellness and in academics. And if you're supporting teachers, they need that emotional support just as much as students do. And that helps. If you're there and they know you'll help them, that's critical. It changes everything.
Well, Kathleen, I know you've spoken to this in part already, but I just want to sit here for a minute longer. I'm an administrator listening to this conversation, and I'm feeling an enormous weight of guilt because I'm not getting into classrooms as much as I want. I'm not giving us feedback as much as I want. But you're sitting here as an experienced education leader who's saying, listen, I understand that, but I also have a solution that can help you. So go there a little bit more and talk about, and I know that this is the part of the conversation where I'm giving you guys an opportunity to talk about how DigiCoach has helped you leverage more feedback. So talk a little bit more, Kathleen, about how you have a solution that is helping leaders provide more feedback meaningfully.
Well, I think that we're showing that feedback is much more important by the usage of instructional coaches. I think that's been a big movement in education, but I still believe it comes from the leaders. So getting in there and doing that, it's not usual. This is something that a lot of administrators are going to have a paradigm shift, because it's not what they thought they were signing up for. But because many of them, I said before, were not taught. I was not taught with collaborative strategies, and I believe they're the most effective educational tool we have. And I learned that as I went along. I had to learn that. I think that becoming a solution-oriented person based on the data and the conversations that you have are critical. But you have to have the data. You have to have the conversations, or else it's just an exercise where many teachers just sort of wait you out. They feel like it's PD du jour, and if I just wait long enough, nobody's going to notice I wasn't doing. So that's the kind of thing I wanted to try to eliminate by having people working together and responding. And I believe the way our email system works is so critical to beginning to set that foundation. You don't just jump in at the top and it's all peaches and cream. You start with a foundation and you build toward that. And that's one of the reasons that I came to work with DigiCoach. It's because I truly believe in the mission and the system and what it can do for education. And I've seen it work myself. So that's why I'm here.
Brandon, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think earlier, Will, you mentioned kind of the idea of your walkthrough process, maybe your calendaring time, right? And we know what gets calendared gets done. We say that a lot around here. So great, you've made it into classrooms, but then kind of what next, right? Like that's only half of the battle, if you will. We know some administrators aren't giving feedback because they don't have coaching experience. If this is your first year as an administrator and you've been a math teacher for a while and you're walking into a literacy lesson, like maybe you don't feel comfortable to give that feedback just yet. We know sometimes administrators just aren't giving feedback. If you're looking at the formal evaluation side of things, less than stellar evaluations sometimes require more paperwork. When do I have time to do that too? And when you look at the research around formal evaluations, like they're done, that system exists, but like 75% of the teachers often say they don't get any feedback at all. So from like a tech systems of solutions that DigiCoach is helping to get advertising here, We're helping take what might normally take you 20 or 30 minutes of time and crunch that down to like 10 or 15. Kathy often shares when she was an administrator using DigiCoach, that 20 to 30 minute email that she might sit down and craft at the end of the day when she's a little crabby and ready to just go home, became like a 5 or a 10-minute process with DigiCoach. And really that's through the usage of things like our pre-written tips that I talked about earlier, having that at your ready to go to kind of give some thoughts. And they also really help too when it wasn't the best lesson and you just want to like tell the teacher to get away from their laptop. Could you just move around a little bit? Nothing in DigiCoach says, hey, could you just move? Or did you know this? Or why didn't you do this? Or did you know Applebee's is hiring? That's not the type of things that we're trying to do with DigiCoach. It's going to say, hey, when you avoid teaching from fixed location and use proximity strategy, everything's in there in a nice coaching friendly, by teachers for teachers. How would you want us to land in your own inbox, really? So I think that's kind of the biggest thing of how we save time. And then one really cool thing, when you use those pre-written strategies and coaching tips, like not only do we collect walkthrough data if we saw relevance, but we also then collect coaching data, something totally unique to DigiCoach, and that I'm able to look across my system, across my school or across my district and see what specific strategies are actually happening in classrooms. And I can take that data and use that to further drive conversations with teachers. A
And it's
principal
fully
recently shared.
customizable. You can put in there whatever your mission is, you can put that in there. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. I was just going to say a principal recently shared a cool strategy that they were using around like see it, share it, claim it. So they were seeing things in classrooms. They were sharing those activities during an admin meeting, or during a teacher's meeting, during a staff meeting. And they were asking teachers to claim, like, yeah, I'm doing that in my room. You were in my room. I did that last week. And that really was helping start some collaborative conversations amongst the teachers. Like, that's cool. I never thought to do that. Like, let's chat about that more. Can I steal your lesson plan? Can I, steal that activity from you?
See it, share it, claim it.
Yeah, I thought that was
like that. I'm stealing it. That's fantastic.
I stole it from someone else, pass it along.
All right. Well,
lots of those little things that we picked up over the years.
Well, Principal Matters listeners, as we wrap up, I just want to encourage you, wherever you are in your school year, as you're listening to this conversation, you're not alone when it comes to your heart and desire and yearning to make sure that instruction is being as effective as it can be within your school. And as we wrap up, I want to ask each of you, and I'm going to begin with Molly, what's one parting word of advice that you would give to listeners as they think about those responsibilities of providing good feedback? And how can listeners stay connected with you?
I think always going back to your why and always leading from your heart, from why are we doing this? What is our goal here? And remembering to create that with your teachers too, that they want to be partners with you. And there's nothing more powerful than connecting with other people with a common goal.
I love that. Kathleen?
I think that as an administrator, most people see the big picture, but you also have to be very detail oriented. And sometimes that gives you the paralysis of analysis. I mean, you have to get started somehow. So choose one thing to do and make that change for yourself in being a better observer. That was the best advice I ever got when I was coached by someone, because I would see the big picture, then I would identify all these things that need to change. And it was very stressful. And this coach said to me, let's choose this month. And then when we meet again, we can talk about that. And that relieved me, realizing I can't change everything at once, but I can choose what I'm going to focus on and move forward. And that's why you need to not give teachers 1,000 different things to do. Coach them, give them something to move forward, but please be good to yourself and do that for yourself also.
Choose one thing and do that. And Brandon, what about you?
Well, last thing I'll kind of leave you guys with is just to kind of share, you don't have to go it alone. If you are the solo administrator at your campus, there's supports out there, whether it's in your district, a fellow colleague, or folks like us. We aim to be a support beyond just, hey, here's a piece of technology, but how can we support your system throughout the year? How can we be your cheerleader? We kind of joke about being like a workout buddy almost. We're helping you get your steps in throughout the day and throughout the school year as we're doing that. In terms of keeping in touch with us, we've all been in this world through digital, through Zoom and everything. So of course we're happy to meet that way. If you want to meet in person, though, what you're going to want to do is fly into one of the local airports here in Southern California. Ontario is going to be closest. Take the quick tram over, get the rental car, and then from there you're going to want to hop on. I'm just kidding. I had to find some way to work in my dumb laugh track button here today.
Brandon is the technology expert who I knew in advance had a laugh track, and I did not know how you were going to work it in, Brandon.
How to find some way.
Well done. So how can people stay connected with you if they can't travel to Southern California?
Sure. If you want to save a flight, digicoach.com, like digital coach, but shorter, digi, to make it sound fancier, digicoach.com. You can find all of our contact information there. When you work with us, we share our cell phone numbers and things like that. So you get direct contact with all of us, and we're here to support everyone.
Well, Molly Dexter, Brandon Mawhorter, and Kathleen Beckham, thank you guys so much for the work that you've done in education for students and for schools, for the work that you're doing now supporting schools, for the partnership that you have with Principal Matters through DigiCoach. And Principal Matters listeners, I just want to encourage you, as you think about your own ways to maximize feedback to teachers, if any of these resources sound like ones that would be helpful to you, you can reach back at digicoach.com and connect with my friends. Whatever situation you're stepping into this week, I'm going to end with something you said, Kathleen and Molly. Know your why, choose one thing and do it. And take time to laugh along the way too, Brandon. I'll throw that in because of you. So thank you guys for your collaboration, for your work, and Principal Matters listeners, thank you for doing what matters, and we'll talk to you again soon. You'll find free resources like this one at williamdparker.com. Subscribe for our free weekly newsletter, which contains bonus material, and also check out the links for Grow Academies, Masterminds, Executive Coaching, and Keynote presentations from my books, as well as from Principal Matters Associates. You can find out more under our speakers tab at williamdparker.com. Thank you for learning together, and thank you for doing what matters.